All right, Liza, welcome to the Pelvic Performance or Postpartum Performance Podcast. So excited to have you here and just kind of connecting with you. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. And first thing, I just want you to share a little bit more about yourself and also professionally what you do, because I think what you do is fabulous. And I'd love for our listeners to know a little bit more.
Okay, well, I'm Liza Janda. I have been teaching childbirth classes, the Bradley method of natural childbirth, for 25 years. And when I was, I also teach, for 20 years, I've been teaching prenatal yoga. I've been teaching yoga, but prenatal yoga also. So those are really my passions: childbirth, educating parents and preparing them to create their ideal birth is really my passion. And how I got started, like if you had told me, even a year or two before I started teaching, I would have said, "Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I would never do that." But when I was pregnant with our daughter, who's now 27, I think I was just so terrified of pretty much everything. I didn't know anything. I was terrified of being a mom. I was terrified of labor and birth. And I even said to my friends, "Oh, I'm not even going to take a childbirth class. Why would I do that? I'll just do whatever the doctor tells me." Well, duh, that's really dumb. Don't ever do that. Thank God.
Food for thought.
Yeah, don't ever do that. That's really, really dumb. So I actually, over a 3-week period, 3 different people said to me, "You should take the Bradley method." And I was like, I never even heard of that. What's that? And I didn't pay attention the first couple times. And then the third time I was like, I think God's trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
So back in the day, there were bookstores. I mean, there's still a few bookstores, but I walked into a bookstore and walked to the childbirth section and pulled out the Natural Birth the Bradley Way. And as I pulled out the book, out fell what turned out to be my teacher's business cards. She'd gone into the bookstore and stuffed all her business cards into all the Bradley method books. Isn't that funny? But you know what? She always had full classes. She was smart. And just the whole experience completely transformed my whole experience of my pregnancy. I think it was more of a negative experience until I started taking those Bradley classes. And, the classes are 12 weeks or about 22 to 24 hours of instruction. Mm-hmm. And so my husband and my best friend and I all took these classes, and it just completely transformed my whole experience. And I hate to use that word empowered because it's, such a cliche word, but it really did. It totally empowered me and my husband to create this birth. And I have to say that both of my births were the most confident I've ever felt in my entire life, because they were such amazing experiences. Our daughter was born in the hospital, and our son was born at home with a midwife, a couple of midwives actually, but with a midwife. And just both experiences were just so amazing. And really, it was the most confident I've ever felt in my life, and the most committed, the most resolved, and I don't know, it's just amazing. And then, I had been a fitness instructor for over 20 years. And when I was 44, I think, 42, I think I decided, well, I can't bounce around on this aerobics floor too much longer. This is wearing me out. And I never even took a yoga class. And I just decided, I signed up for a yoga teacher training.
Oh, I love it. That's so
I don't know.
Courage.
Some people are such planners and so good. And I'm always so amazed at people like that, but I'm like the total opposite. So Yeah. And I signed up and it was so funny. I'd never even taken a class before. And then when I walked in for the first day of the yoga teacher training, the teacher, she's like, hello, what are you doing here? I'm like, I paid you $2,000. I'm taking your teacher training. She's like, oh, what's your name? So anyway, that was it.
I love it.
And I never thought, like, I loved teaching aerobics and fitness. I worked at two of the world's leading spas, the Golden Door and Calavie, and I thought, I was so surprised I didn't miss doing fitness anymore. It was just a total transformation. And then for my final exam for my teacher training, we had to teach a specialty class. And so I said, okay, well, I'll teach prenatal yoga. And then I invited like as many people as I could to come. And I said, it's a free class. It's my final exam. And about 12 people showed up.
Awesome.
And it was amazing. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this too.
That's
So
so
anyway,
cool.
I feel like God just gave me these experiences and put me in these situations and gave me these amazing births so that I could just bless other people with my experiences and what I know.
I love that. That is such a powerful story. And just to have that obedience to continue to follow through with what God's been telling you to, and to not kind of try to steer one way or the other. I think that's such a gift with your ability to not be a planner and to listen and be obedient with that. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I was just praying this morning. I'm like, God, help me to be more organized. help me to do what you want me to do. Anyway, I wish I was as resolved and committed and passionate about, I don't know, anything else, but that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Run with it until God says otherwise. I wanted to touch back on your comment about feeling the most confident that you had ever felt during those births. What about that felt like that confidence, and kind of like what with that experience? Because I know for many people, I don't have children myself, but for many people that have had children, it can be kind of one way or the other. Yeah, it can be a very wide spectrum. And so for you, through the Bradley method, and kind of what other things for you made it so like powerful for you and confident, feeling confident with that? Because it's a big thing.
I think a lot of the problem in this day and age, I mean, is the fact that women get these messages their whole lives, especially here in the United States. You get this message your whole life. You can't do this without an epidural. You can't do this without help from the doctors or the hospital or whatever. And you just can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it without our help. And I just got that message that like, oh my God, I can do this. I was made to do this. And I wasn't going to listen to the other messages. But, you know, I think, and so I just maybe naively totally believed that I could do it, and I did. I mean, it was, but even during my daughter's birth, labor, my doctor, whom I chose because he was a lot more open to supporting a natural childbirth. His partner, though, wasn't, and still isn't. He's still practicing, and he still isn't. And my doctor was at a wedding, and he was on his way back in Arizona, on his way back from this wedding. And so his partner comes in, and I hear his partner over in the corner say, "Get the C-section staff ready." And I'm like, no, you're not doing that to me. And then he broke my bag of water without telling me. And I think he did that first, and then I heard him say, "Get the C-section staff ready." And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, no, you're not going to do that. And I swear to you, my cervix just went open right up. And I'm like, I got to push. And I push, and he's like, "Wow, you're one heck of a pusher." So, and it was so funny because my doctor got there right in time. When she was right before she was born. But I don't know. I think even then I still was, this doctor was going, "Oh, you can't do this. We have to help you." But yeah, it can feed into women's insecurities. And sort of along those lines right now, I actually was talking to a midwife friend of mine during this whole COVID thing. She actually has a really super low, she's a home birth midwife and birth center. And she's historically had a super, super low transfer rate. So anywhere from like 5 to 10%, which means that, and most of the time it's women that are getting exhausted. And they're usually first-time moms, and they're getting exhausted. They didn't rest in the beginning of labor. It's taking a long time. So they need to go to the hospital, and they need the rest that an epidural can give. So anyway, but she and I were both talking because, probably over 70% of my students over the past 25 years give birth without medication. But these last two Zoom classes that I've had during COVID, more people have given birth with medication than not, and there's been more C-sections. And so I was talking to my friend, and she said, I've had 5 moms just since COVID who had pregnancy-induced high blood pressure or preeclampsia, which is highly unusual for her. And she just really rarely gets a mom like that. She said she's had moms whose babies have had the cord wrapped multiple times around the neck, babies who are breech. And I think all this stress of this unstable world, moms are totally internalizing this. I wish I could figure out a way to help them. But I don't know. I kind of went off. I said to you in my email, I'm not a talker, but here I'm blah, 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 blah.
No, that's great. I think, well, what I would be curious about is even talking into your expertise of prenatal yoga and some of those things. I know that there's so many benefits to prenatal yoga, regardless of circumstances. But even now, I think, have you noticed with the classes that you're doing, we don't necessarily know outcomes of kind of what their labor and what that looks like, but I would love to hear kind of from your expertise of what, prenatal yoga, the benefits of it, and potentially, especially with this time of uncertainty and kind of mothers potentially doing a lot more internalizing of the stressors that we're all experiencing, how that potentially could be an outlet for them and for helping for them and for their baby.
Well, it's funny. You take a yoga class and at the end you feel like, I feel so good, and I think relieving stress is so, so important. I think different people are going to have different ways of relieving stress or trying not to internalize all that instability in your world. But yoga is just good for you. There's research that shows that practicing yoga during pregnancy three times a week actually has shown to shorten labor. So moms are able to relax. They get that skill of relaxation, and if you can relax, it's actually going to shorten your labor. It's also been shown, research has shown that the mother's perception of pain is a lot less because she learns breathing techniques. But really, you don't even have to practice specialized breathing techniques. It's really in through the nose and out through the mouth, things like that. And so if mothers can master learning how to do deep abdominal breathing, then they are able to use that during labor. And it comes, like I teach my childbirth classes that, you have to practice relaxation. It's not going to happen like that. It's a learned response. And so I think, when I teach yoga, I do some vinyasa. So it's sort of a marriage of breath and movement. So a lot of what I'm doing is, as we extend, we inhale, as we fold, we exhale, we're moving. It's all that slow, deep breathing is really sort of practice for how you're going to do in labor. And it's a rhythmic it's rhythmic movement married to the breath. It's kind of what vinyasa is. And the women that cope the best with labor use rhythm, rituals, and relaxation. So the rhythm and the rituals, which means repetitive movements that are rhythmic in nature. You're not like you're going to be doing yoga during your labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would be some examples of those?
So swaying your hips from side to side, or literally just walking. I had one of my friends said, she said, I just started walking when labor started, and I didn't stop until it was time to push the baby out, or between contractions. She just put one foot in front of the other and just stayed focused on that. It's rocking in a rocking chair, dancing, slow dancing with your partner, literally having, well, actually, here's this one really helped me. My husband, I don't even know where he came up with it. I don't even remember learning it in class, and I teach it now. It's called effleurage. And so the coach actually takes their hand, if I stand up, so like the bottom of the mom's belly, way down, well, you can't see, but anyway, the very underneath, you know, the lower abdomen, like where you might feel menstrual cramps, right above that pubic bone. And they take and go in one direction only, and they not, if you don't want to do it like it so that it tickles, it's firm enough that it just feels almost like a, I don't know, like not like a tickle.
Okay.
Just and it's just, and they go in one direction only. And I literally couldn't make it through a contraction if my husband wasn't doing that. And so that is an example of the gate control theory, but it was a rhythmic ritual. It turned into a ritual. I couldn't cope unless he was doing that for me. So some people might want their hair brushed or things like that. So anything that's rhythmic, that's and that's repetitive. And so in a sense, when you're doing prenatal yoga, that's what you're doing. You're doing things sort of in a rhythmic way, but you're moving with your breath. And that is, and so that's partly why when you come to the end of yoga and you relax and maybe lie down in Shavasana, close your eyes, and when you sit back up again, that's why you feel so relaxed. All that deep breathing. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think I love that part about yoga. I think that's one of my favorite parts is when you actually let yourself rest, quiet the mind a little bit more. And then you realize like, oh, I needed this, and with all of that. So I can only imagine during times like this, and even just with pregnancy and all of the unknowns and some of that too, can be really helpful.
There's that element of surrendering, not like stick them up, okay, I give up, that kind of thing, but surrendering. Like I always say when I start Shavasana, okay, just give in to gravity. And you kind of have to do that when you're in labor. You have to just give into gravity. Just let your belly hang. You just, you know, you don't collapse your legs, but you just, everything just goes. You know, I say you should have this look on your face like you just went like this. You went, like that. I even say it's okay to drool, you know.
Let everything relax. I love it.
Yeah, let's let everything relax. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Let's talk. No, it did. Let's talk a little bit on, so mental state, but also reducing discomfort associated with pregnancy. So with prenatal yoga, obviously the movement is really good with the blood flow, with the kind of ongoing growing of the blood volume as baby's growing. But that mental state too, I think we kind of touched on that, being able to actually like relax. But any other things where it kind of gives you that mental edge with their actual labor, anything like that for the women that you've seen that have consistently practiced yoga during their pregnancy?
Yeah, well, it's funny. At the end, or sometimes at the beginning, I give everybody a little tiny piece of paper, and it has what I call on it birth wisdom. So not only am I trying to help them feel better through yoga, I'm also trying to educate them. So I give them, bits and pieces of information from various sources, to try to kind of give them confidence and to help them understand what's happening, what's going to be happening in their body, and that it's just kind of an amazing experience for them. And I try to give them information that helps to take their fear away. I think people have so much fear just because they've gotten messages, through their whole lives and constantly. Also, I tell people, if people are going to start telling you a horror story, you need to walk away, or you need to put your hand up and say stop, things like that. But I just try to weave into maybe a theme of a class. Well, as a matter of fact, I got somebody contacted me, like I might have a fairly new YouTube channel.
Okay.
And the theme of this one class is words matter. And really the idea is, what are you saying to yourself about your pregnancy, labor, and birth? What words are you using? And also, what words are people around you using? It's really important that you choose, the right words that you can, I don't know, you just have to, I think it takes a lot of work to get into that spiritual aspect of labor. And so hopefully through the yoga classes, the themes that I choose, the messages I'm trying to share, I mean, I'm not preaching to them the whole time. I'm trying to make them feel good and try to make them feel confident. But I'm getting off.
No, you're good. I have a question about the how have you seen, I guess, over time with having that confidence with the words of what you're telling yourself in the day and age of like social media and some of those things, and kind of that false perfect that a lot of people can kind of think of? How have you, or if you've seen any change in kind of the thoughts that women are bringing or the fears that they have? Or is it, in addition to the fear of the actual birth, a fear of needing to have a perfect labor or have a perfect like pregnancy and stuff, more along some of the societal things? Have you noticed anything like that, or some of the pressures that some of these mom-to-be are putting on themselves?
It's funny because I'm in I'm in quite a few Facebook groups, but these are groups where, like for example, like International Cesarean Awareness Network, there's a San Diego group on Facebook, but there's also a, an international one. And these are women who are trying really hard to have a VBAC, a vaginal birth after cesarean. And I don't know, they're still getting lots of messages and it's feeding into them. And so they go on these websites and post information or stories or things their midwife said or their doctor said, that is undermining their confidence. So, I mean, I think some people take in what I say, they're ready for it, they're looking for it, and they're going to absorb it. I once had this woman who, she took my prenatal yoga classes throughout her first pregnancy. She didn't get pregnant again, or didn't have another baby again for 6 years. And she came back to yoga. She didn't come back until the very end of her pregnancy. I guess she was a little busy. But she had her yoga mat bag. And she goes, Liza, I still have my birth wisdom in my yoga mat bag. Oh. And it wasn't like she used to practice yoga, but she never took them out. And so she had this crumpled up piles of pieces of paper that I'd given her 6 years ago from her last pregnancy. So I think and she ended up having an amazing birth, but it's like I remember when she was in my class and it was almost like when I was giving information, I could almost see that light bulb go off over her head. And she's like, really? What's this? What's this you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And she absorbed it, and she took it in, and she ran with it, and she had an amazing home birth. She went from planning a hospital birth to having an amazing home birth. But I think some people, maybe they're not ready to hear it, or they hear some of it, and I don't really know. I mean, I think I can't take responsibility for the choices that they make, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I mean, I do know some people say, "Oh, I learned so much from your class. I was so fearful before, but your birth wisdom changed things around." But not everybody's. I don't know. I couldn't really tell you, but
Mm-hmm. No, I think there's so much, though, even hearing more on the positive side and not the fear that
right.
we, are feeding into that fear. So having a new, positive, encouraging thing, and
Perspective.
and knowing that it's like, oh, there is another option. This isn't the only way. And I think that's very, very encouraging. And I think that's why you're so successful with your classes, and for just in general, for people coming to know even your blog. You have a really well-known blog for all those things prenatal. We'll make sure to include all of that in
Thanks.
show notes and everything. But I think that's what's so important, is that we need, more people sharing that, that there's a different story that we can be telling ourselves, and we can change that story, even if it's been for a long time that you've maybe thought certain things or expecting certain things, and changing those expectations. I think
Right.
that's so good.
It's funny, people have different reactions. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had somebody in my, I think it was my first Zoom childbirth class, and she seemed to be taking it all in and absorbing it. But then we were talking, I was saying, so if your bag of waters breaks before you go into labor, and I, lay it out, these are your options, this is evidence-based information, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, well, if my water breaks, I'm just gonna freak out. And I'm like, well, why are you gonna freak out? And there was a couple other things that we were talking about. And she goes, well, I'm just gonna freak out if that happens. And I'm like, I go, you've got the information, you've got the education, you know what your options are. There's no need for you to freak out. I said, remember, you need to learn how to respond to what's happening rather than react. Well, guess what happened? She went into labor, she freaked out, and I think, this is my assumption, I do not know this for a fact, but I think she had a total panic attack. And she went from wanting to have a completely natural birth to having every intervention in the book in the hospital, and went to the hospital too soon and all that kind of stuff. So just because someone takes my classes, it doesn't necessarily mean they're really ready for everything. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
So
That's so true. I'd be curious to hear, so from my perspective as more of a physical therapist that does more with like pelvic health and some of that, there's so much benefit to the pelvic floor with some of that prenatal yoga. So touching on that, I think with being able to relax those muscles like you mentioned, and doing some of those stretches, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, and even with a little bit on that model that you had of just talking about how that pipe that you were showing me before, with just in general of that, how that can correlate from doing certain stretches and being aware of your core and your pelvic floor, and where that would carry over into labor. I would love to hear more about that, and I think the listeners would too.
It's funny because on Saturday in my Zoom class, I give everybody the option of going into plank before they go into downward facing dog. And at the end of class, somebody said, I thought we weren't supposed to do plank. And I'm like, you don't have to do anything I tell you to do. I said, but really, 100% of pregnant women are going to have diastasis rectus. Mm-hmm. Their abdominal is going to separate. They can't help it, 100%. Mm-hmm. So the pelvic floor is connected to those abdominal muscles. And I am constantly saying, hug your baby with your belly muscles. hug
That's
it
a
in.
good
I'm
cue.
even, as I'm talking, I'm squeezing my Kegel muscle. I can't help it. So, you know, things like that. And I start out every class with working on strengthening the back. We do, well, in the Bradley method, we talk about the pelvic rocking that strengthens the 3 Bs, the belly, the back, and the bottom. I tried to say, you know, contract that pelvic floor, contract your Kegel muscle, because I mean, those things need to be, you need to also not only know how to contract them, you also need to know how to release that Kegel muscle too.
100%. Yes.
Because, well, you could squeeze that Kegel muscle till the cows come home and try to push your baby out. Forget it. You know, we were talking about the pipe.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pipe in here.
Yeah.
So I use this as my model. So here's the bottom of so the uterus is up here, baby's in here. This is the cervix. And this is really kind of the shape of your birth canal, your vagina, and here's the vaginal opening. So like we do different positions in yoga, different lunges, side lunges, Kegel, you know, squeeze your Kegel, different things like that, to strengthen this pelvic floor. Because if you're lying on your back with an epidural and you're trying to push your baby out, you're lying on your back. Here's your cervix, here's your vaginal opening. Literally, you're having to push your baby uphill. So here's the baby trying to come out, right?
Yeah.
So you literally have to push that baby uphill. You're going against gravity. So I tell my students, I go, if you can get upright. So we practice squatting. We practice squatting like one knee down and one leg out to the side. And there's many different ways to squat, but if you're pushing your baby up this way, you're not going against gravity. It's a lot easier to push out. You're less likely to stretch out and damage that pelvic floor, as Lindsey knows. And also, if you're lying on your back, think about this. It's almost like you're doing, it's almost like doing crunches. And so as you try to push that baby out, that abdominal wall is going like it's opening up, right? And so if you're upright, it's just a lot more effective. And if you have to lie down, if you really do have an epidural, don't lie on your back. Please don't lie on your back. Lie on your side. Then
would it matter which side?
No, it doesn't really matter which side, but you know, on the left side, so that inferior vena cava, the main vein, bringing blood back to the heart, on most people is in the back of the body and on the right. And so let's say one of the first things that we see in labor, you see a mom, a baby maybe is not like, it's affecting maybe the baby's heart rate. It's sort of like that very first sign. So emergencies don't rarely happen like that. They develop. So that might be the first thing we see. So we're going to go, okay, mom, we're going to lay you down on your left side and then everything's good. So because that's the best circulation. So now you want to, like, maybe you do 3 or 4 pushes on one side, then maybe you get help if you have an epidural, or if not, you roll over on the other side, push. I don't think one side or another. Yeah. But yeah, so in yoga, we'll do things like, you know, strengthen that pelvic floor, strengthen the abdominal wall. Plus, you know, your spine is, you know, shaped kind of like this. And think about all that weight of that uterus. It's growing, it's bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's pulling your spine forward. And that's why, honestly, probably the main reason most people come to prenatal yoga is their low back is killing them. They come to yoga and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. So that even is also another mental thing. So it's awful to be in pain, isn't it? It's just horrible. You just want to lie on the couch and do nothing.
Which doesn't help.
Doesn't help.
Yeah, doesn't help. That movement is meant to restore that and feel better. For sure.
So I'm trying to do things that are going to strengthen their low back, strengthen their pelvic floor, strengthen their abdominal wall, the core, basically. You know?
That's awesome. I think that's so important and really cool to connect the breathing and the positioning and some of that rhythmic movement that you had mentioned before, I wanted to circle back quick to describe basically what she was holding up was like a PVC pipe in kind of like a C shape. So when it was up and down, it was more like an L. And then when she turned it down, it was more like a sideways L. For those of you that are listening, but if not, we'll have a video posted on YouTube for you to see. But really cool model and visual for someone that's either trying to decide how they want to labor and delivery and some of that, and someone that even if they're just kind of dabbling into that and not really sure that there's options. I think sometimes women think that there's one way, or they see in the movies, or they hear from, one or two people that that's how they had their child. And so then they think, oh, that's the way. Or depending on even the doctor or whoever they're working with, they might recommend a certain way and they think that, oh, that's the only way. So I think that's really empowering to know, again, just know your options, have that knowledge, have that awareness, where I think that is going to be, that's so important. So important. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. So one of the main things that I wanted to start this postpartum performance podcast was I wanted to get knowledge out to mothers, soon to be mothers postpartum. And the big thing was to answer the question, or to bring light around topics such as, I wish I would have known this sooner. So with some of the women that you work with, what is a common or topic that tends to come up that you would like to share some nuggets of information with on potentially something that's come up that you've heard a lot of people saying, like, oh, I wish I would have known this sooner, or even if it's prenatal yoga?
Oh gosh. I don't know if this is even related to prenatal yoga, but I also, before COVID, I also taught childbirth classes at Scripps.
Okay.
And it's funny because when I talk about epidurals, I do this little exercise. I give everybody a clothespin. So I have the coach put a clothespin, one that that represents the blood pressure cuff, the IV, the pulse oximeter, the urinary catheter, because you have to have a urinary catheter because you can't get up and go to the bathroom. You have to keep the bladder empty. The external fetal monitor that measures the contractions, one that measures the baby's heart rate, and then the lidocaine shot in the back, and then the epidural. And I get this all the time, like, oh, I thought it was just a shot. They don't realize what's involved. But then, like, I guess after a prenatal yoga class, I think a lot of people some people come up and they're like, well, I sort of was thinking about this kind of a birth, or a birth center birth, or a home birth, or something like that, or maybe hiring a doula, but it's funny, they have these ideas in their head because they've heard about them, and they think, well, that might be my ideal birth, but they're afraid to even investigate or pursue and find out information. But I think sometimes some of the information I give them in class just makes them go, oh, and then they'll come up to me after class and maybe ask me some questions and things like that. But I don't really have anything earth-shattering to share.
That is so good, though. Being able to acknowledge the thoughts too, because I think, like you said, a lot of people either hear or have thought about it, but then they don't verbalize it. And once they verbalize it, it makes it more real. And they're like, oh, wait, she just said that happens. I don't know if I actually want to do that, or different things. So I think that is really powerful for women to really plan those things and think about them, ask the questions. I think don't be passive.
And sometimes people, once they acknowledge to me that, oh, I thought of doing such and such, and then I go, well, have you done anything about it? And they're like, no. And I go, well, I said, here's what you need to do. You need to just investigate. Just because you're making a phone call and asking questions, or writing an email and asking questions, or checking into this and that. It doesn't commit you, because I think people think they have in their head, and this, I see this all the time. People are afraid to gather more information because it's so scary, because then they think they have to make a decision. I go, here's the thing. You're going to make some phone calls. You're going to talk to a few people or email or whatever, and you're not going to put any pressure on yourself to do this. Just because you're gathering information doesn't mean you're making the decision to do it. But I'll tell you what, once people get past that fear and they start investigating, they start to get a little more confident, and they're like, oh, okay, this isn't such a far out idea that, an unreachable possibility. So so that's kind of interesting. When that makes me really happy when people do that. But I get it. It's scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was really good words of wisdom, and just being kind of that accountability for some of your students and attendees to your classes too. And just for anyone listening to know, you can, again, look into options, but it's not saying that you're, signing your name, you're not, right? You're not paying anything. You're just asking, and just being curious, I think, is some of the best ways to learn and to know your options, which is awesome.
For sure. Awesome.
All right. So wrapping up a little bit, I did want to touch on, what is your favorite form of exercise? Being a yoga instructor, do you enjoy yoga, or what other things do you enjoy doing for exercise? What brings you joy?
It depends on the day.
Me too.
It's funny because I used to love yoga. Love. It was, that's what I did most of the time. But now I'm 62 now, and I've had different injuries. I mean, I got I can't remember, but what's the name for tennis elbow? It has another name. It's not really
tendonitis.
Well, it was tendonitis in my forearms from from doing way too many handstands, trying to learn how to do handstands away from the wall.
Lateral epicondylitis. Yeah.
And then I hurt my shoulder doing chaturanga, and I'm like, gosh darn it. I didn't use that word. I used probably not, the perfect word. I'm like, I hate yoga because it's hurting my body. But now I've gotten to a point where it's more of I think more of, not that it's so gentle, but it's more a way for me, for emotional. So it's my yoga. It's not what I used to be able to do, like touch the back of my head with my foot, or stand on my head and that kind of stuff. It's changed. It's different. But I have to say, though, my real, right now, my favorite is hiking. As Lindsey knows, when I called her this morning, I was out hiking. That's why my shirt was all wet. I was all sweaty. I was out hiking, thinking I took a shorter route so I could get back in time to talk to Lindsey. And I contacted her. I literally had to run to my car to get home on time. I didn't have time to take a shower or anything like that. So, but I just love, I go out and go hiking. And I usually listen to some kind of a podcast. It's usually a pastor. Today it was Rick Warren from Saddleback Church, because I am a Christian. And sometimes it's Joyce Meyer, I think it's Meyer, because she cracks me up. And then I take my earbuds out and I pray and I talk to God, and I just am so grateful that I can be out in nature, that I can put one foot in front of the other, that I'm strong, and that I can do that. I'm so grateful. And then lately I've been actually taking some other outdoor yoga classes, maybe once or twice a week. And then I do my own practice at home. I use yogadownload.com, which is a streaming service. I have some prenatal yoga classes on that website, pre and postnatal yoga classes, but I'll do my own practice at home. But I've been taking classes outside with Shelley Scott at the Brengle Terrace, the Alta Vista Botanical Garden. So it's an outdoor area. It's really nice. That's kind of where I got the courage to move my prenatal yoga classes to the park, was by taking her classes. So that was nice. So I really, it's yoga and hiking. That's pretty much it.
That's awesome.
That's why I'm all sweaty and I didn't take a shower.
Rock star. When she got on the phone, she was like, I just got done doing this like 4.5 mile hike. I was like, well, go girl, go. I was like, no worries. We were in no rush to chat. I think that's awesome to get out in the outdoors.
Into my truck thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I haven't run. I was saying I probably 25 years. I don't think I've run in 25 years. So yeah.
That's so good.
I survived.
Yeah, it's so good to hear, even just as a fellow sister in Christ too, and just being able to spend that time in God's creation is so powerful. I enjoy my beach walks in the morning for that similar time. So final question that I have for you today. So each guest I've been asking that's on the podcast is, you're at your favorite coffee shop, you're waiting in line, and there's a new mom that is standing behind you, and she taps you on the shoulder and she says, Liza, what advice would you give me? I am struggling with staying healthy and finding a new routine as a mother. What would you give? You have 1 minute before you have to order.
Okay. First of all, I would make sure that you take a good comprehensive childbirth class. If you're going to take hypnobirthing or hypnobabies, you should also take the Enjoy online class, because that gives you a lot more sort of fundamental information and physiology, whereas like hypnobirthing, hypnobabies teaches you, basically, they call it hypnotherapy, but it's relaxation, basically. It's the same kind of stuff we're teaching the Bradley method. Bradley method is a lot more comprehensive. But anyway, I mean, there's all kinds of classes that you can take. Take a class taught by a real person if you can, somebody that you can actually talk to, ask questions, someone who knows what she's talking about. And then make sure that you're either doing walking every day or swimming every day or doing yoga, maybe not every day, but walking, swimming, or yoga are the 3 best exercises. I've probably gone over my minute. And make sure you're getting 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. If you're not getting 80 to 100 grams of protein a day and 2,400 calories a day, you're not eating enough to grow a healthy baby with a good brain, and also for you to stay healthy. So eating 80 to 100 grams of protein and 2,400 calories a day and adding salt to taste is the best pregnancy diet you can. So
great advice. Thank you.
That's pretty brief, but
no, but it's helpful.
Pray.
Yeah,
you should pray.
Absolutely. Awesome. So Liza, where can our listeners find you if they're looking to see some of your amazing content, or if they want to attend one of your classes or anything like that? Where's a great place for people to kind of follow you and connect with you?
So my website is yogajanda.com. So it's yoga and then my last name, yogajanda.com, JANDA.com. And I also have prenatal and postnatal yoga classes on the yogadownload.com. I also have a YouTube channel. You have to find it yoga YouTube and then Yoga Janda, 2 words, yoga separate Janda, not Yoga Janda like my website. And then I have so many boards on Pinterest. So you're looking for information about pregnancy, yoga, breastfeeding, labor and birth. Go to my Pinterest, Yoga Janda on Pinterest. There's lots of ways to find me.
You have seriously some fantastic content for people that haven't seen the stuff that she's putting out. Great stuff. So I cannot speak.
And it all just honestly, it all started as a passion and a hobby, really. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I feel like God just sent me in the right direction, and I obediently followed most of the time.
And blossoming into a fantastic I think, encourager and someone that can definitely bring more knowledge to the moms that are fearful of any of those things. I think that you've definitely taken that in stride and have done exceedingly well with it.
You know, there's a quote, I don't even know where it came from, but it's, she believed she could, so she did. And it can be that simple.
I love that. That is so good.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much for you coming on this show today. Anything else that you would like to share with listeners or anything like that?
Nope, I'm sure there is, but I can't think of anything other than I'm going to go take a shower.
Yeah. You earned it. You earned it after your hike. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Lindsay.